And we are live. Alrighty. Here we go. Here we are. And everything there looks to be in order. All right. Let us proceed then. Greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to the Storyteller's Corner. I'm your host, Joshua T. Culkin's Trilogy, also known as Byron Sidious. It's going to be slightly unstructured because before I got up this morning, I wasn't planning on doing a show. Just kind of decided to hop on and let rip because I actually have the opportunity, which is somewhat unusual. Just really quick, gonna make sure that this is actually going.
Don't blink, ladies. This is the last time I'm
God,
joining.
I hate it with this shit. You know, it's one of the downsides of Rumble are these terrible AI ads. I really wish that they would ditch them, possibly in favor of real ads. I know that's kind of a contradiction in terms, but anyway. Moving into what I wanted to talk a little bit about today, which is regarding the title of the stream here, the fading format. I've always prided myself as being a bookish sort of person. I tend to focus on books, genre fiction, be it fantasy, science fiction, horror, even classical literature and the time-tested classics. Obviously, these are not mass-market paperbacks, but rather tomes of mythology. Reading has been a central part of who I am since I was a young one, since I was a little kid. I've always been particularly fond of the genres of fantasy, sci-fi, and horror. Literacy rates in the United States and in the UK, in the West generally speaking, have been on a downward trajectory for the last couple of decades. It's gotten especially notable since about 2005, 2006. That's when the American Foundation for Literary Achievement first noticed that there was a distinct spike downward in reading comprehension skills, literary analytical skills. You've got college professors who have got kids coming into their classrooms who literally do not know how to take abbreviated or abridged notes or notations on their lectures. Oftentimes what they'll end up doing is coming in with a phone or a tablet or a laptop, putting on an audio recorder to record the entirety of the lecture, and then utilizing an AI program, be it ChatGPT, Grok, Claude, take your pick, and they ask or prompt the program to summarize and crib out notes for them to review later on. Now, I try not to be an overt Luddite, but I am. Just to be fair. When it comes to tech, I'm somewhat dippy. I'm a bit foolish. I do not understand the preference for utilizing an AI tool to basically give you cliff notes or a crib sheet for a lecture or for analysis of a work of literature, whether it be contemporary literature, classical literature, or genre fiction literature. Whatever the format, I don't understand the preference for relying on an AI program to do your heavy lifting and heavy thinking for you. It could very well be because I am a bit of an idiot. I don't understand the desire to rely so heavily on a machine, on a program that we have seen time and again, is not reliable for giving you an accurate view of the material on hand. It could be my bias because I'm an older fellow because I'm in my middle age. I'll be turning 44 in a couple of months. So perhaps that's part of the problem is I am kind of late stage Gen X / elder millennial. I grew up, yes, with technology advancing and with the advent of the internet when I was a younger adolescent, sure. But I've never had a preference for relying on the technology as opposed to a more classical form of partaking of the material and analyzing it for myself. Even though my own analysis can be admittedly somewhat spotty, because as I mentioned, I'm not the smartest person in the world, not by a long stretch. But anywho, going to rely on the notes that I've got jotted down. And yes, I still prefer using an actual pen and paper for taking down notes of any sort when it comes to subjects, topics of interest to me specifically. I find that I'm able to retain the material a lot better when I handwrite it, even if it would be simpler or quicker to copy and paste into a notepad or into a Word document. I tend to prefer just writing it out for myself so I can quickly pick up the notebook that I'm utilizing for notes on any given day or regarding specific topics, because I do have my notebooks separated out by topic. Just got these three right here offhand just to hold up as a point of reference to demonstrate what I'm talking about. But we've got a kind of a massive tragedy for readers. Wordplay intended with mass. ReaderLink is and has been for about 35 years, roughly. They have been one of the largest distributors of mass market paperbacks to bookstores and storefronts that sell various items and types of merchandise, including the big box stores like Target and Walmart, as well as grocery stores. ReaderLink, near the end of 2025, so just a few months ago, put in a stop order to big box stores like Target and Walmart in late 2025. What this translates to is the largest distributor of mass market paperback editions of any book is no longer going to be sending them to department stores like Target, Walmart, Sears, Ames, what have you. Now, for reference, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the differentiation, what I'm talking about, this is a standard hardcover book. This is Magic Terror by Peter Straub, which I recently did a review and analysis of, versus mass market paperback. This is Shadowland, also by Peter Straub. There's kind of a theme going there. I recently did a review for this one as well. Excellent story, by the way. If you're looking for more atmospheric dread, definitely recommend. But the size and the quality of the paper utilized, mass market paperbacks usually rely on 8 to 10 pound paper, as opposed to your hardcovers, which use 12 or 14 pound standard white paper for publication production. This is going to hold up a lot better than this over the years. Not only because it's got a solid cover, solid backing, solid binding. They don't just use glue in the hardcovers. They also use stitch binding, which I know that's very niche. It's very nitty gritty to dive that far down into the differentiation between the formats. But it does matter to bibliophiles, to folks who want to know how best to preserve their physical media, their actual tangible entertainment sources. It makes a difference. So the mass market paperback, which for a lot of folks like myself, growing up in the 80s and 90s, was their primary option for getting into the realms of fiction, whether it be suspense, horror, or sci-fi, or fantasy. The mass market paperback was your key point of entry. public library systems, for time out of mind, since like the 1950s and 60s, relied heavily on stocking their shelves with mass market paperback editions of the titles that they would carry for the general public. Why? There's a very simple reason, actually. And it's unfortunate, but it boils down to price point and affordability and budgets. We'll take this for an example, because this is a nice hardcover of Robert Chambers' The King in Yellow. Also highly recommended. This is the Heathen edition. It's got a great introductory section. Now, this hardcover of The King in Yellow, I was able to grab it off of Thrift Books. It's pre-owned. I got it for $12. I got it for a steal. Quite awesome. But you'll see from the original retail price, $19.95 for this beautiful hardcover edition. Okay? Now, we compare that to a book that came out in roughly, well, not, it didn't come out at the same time, but that version was produced and distributed at roughly the same time as Duncan's Paragon Lost. And you'll notice that the list price, $7.50. For any library system that is operating on a threadbare budget, you're going to go with the more affordable option. Mass market paperbacks also, through distributors like Baker and Taylor, Bowker's, and ReaderLink, for decades have had bulk order discounts available to apply a discount to the per copy price. The same kind of discount is seldom made available, or at least it's never made as deep a discount for your hardcovers. Okay? To get a case of 25 copies of, say, something like this, which is a beautiful hardcover, you're only going to get, even through a distributor you've worked with for years, maybe a 10 to 15% distribution bulk order discount applied to your order in order to carry multiple copies of the book. Whereas the mass market paperbacks, they're lighter weight. There's less overhead or inventory space required to fit them on the shelves. So you can get a deeper discount, typically, especially from ReaderLink, which would offer volume discounts for a bulk order somewhere in the range of 20 to 25% off if the seller was willing to order a bulk patch. So if you ordered like 10 to 25 copies of a mass market paperback, you were looking at taking that $8 per copy and cutting it down to $6 or $5 per copy, as opposed to a $20 hardcover. You're ordering 20 to 25 copies, but you're only getting a 5% discount. Yes, you're saving money, but you're not saving nearly as much if you are a library, if you are a big box retailer, or even if you're a smaller or sideline retailer like a grocery store or a pharmacy. Stores and locations, merchant locations, that's not their primary merchandise on offer. You see this especially at airports, where they have sundry goods stores or odds and ends stores, where they'll have like a shelf or a rack of paperbacks for people to pick up and read on their flight. Not as common these days, because people are allowed to utilize their phones and their tablets and their other electronic devices during the flight. So people are relying less on picking up a book when they're taking off for wherever they're headed to, and they're relying more on their devices. It's a sad state of things from my perspective, but bear in mind I have a bias. I'm heavily biased in favor of bookish things. But I'm not going to sit there and growl at somebody if they bring their Kindle, which is already loaded with a bunch of books. If they bring their Kindle or their Kobo reader or their, a Barnes & Noble Nook, whatever their reading device of choice is, not going to growl at them for using an electronic device to read, because at least they're still reading. But still, it is a sad day for paperbacks. The distributor scaled back sales and shipments to impulse locations, starting as far back as 2020. What is an impulse location? Those are places, like I mentioned, grocery stores, pharmacy stores like CVS and Walgreens, or Dollar Tree, Dollar General, the kind of knick-knacky budget stores that you might sometimes see these things at. So ReaderLink is no longer distributing to those locations as prevalently as they used to. They haven't completely cut them off. They've just scaled back exceedingly because there's not as much demand. And when you're operating in a market that, to be fair, has to thrive on supply and demand. Well, if there's not demand for the product, you're going to only hurt yourself financially by providing something that nobody's asking for. Much like this stream. Okay? Part of the reason there's not much of an audience for it, be it on YouTube or Rumble, there's not exactly a lot of folks clamoring to hear from a guy who looks like he's got meth mouth talking about books. They're going to go to someone more reputable or who has a bigger audience and is already well established. They're going to go to somebody like Literature Devil or Savage Books or Shady Do Rags, other folks who are fantastic content creators who focus on books and bookish things, but have established themselves as their trusted names and voices within this particular niche of online activity. I can't blame them for doing that. That would be unreasonable of me. Next up, the format isn't going away entirely. It's not going to just vanish or disappear. But even publishers have become increasingly hesitant to produce titles in the mass market size or format, what is sometimes referred to as the A3 or A4 size. Most of them have moved to the A5 as their primary methodology. Hey, Cortex, Brother Cortex, how you doing, sir? Good to see you this morning. By the A5 format, the size that I'm referring to is also known as the trade paperback. This book, Scottish Myths by 451 Publishing, which is a subsidiary of Flame Tree Publishing, who did all these beautiful hardcover mythology collections. So this is 451 is a subsidiary of them. They have turned to the trade paperback format for some of their more niche mythology collections. Been better. That's not good, brother. What's going on? Everything all right? If it's something that you need to talk to me privately, you can always message me on the side. You know that, brother. And hey, trust me, I know that feeling. The feeling of, yeah, I'm upright and breathing, so I'm going to count that as a victory for today. Sometimes it's the only victory I've got is that, hey, I made it another day. God hasn't taken me up to ride the hansom just yet. All right, brother. Yeah, we'll talk in private about that. And I'm sorry if this is not the kind of topic that you'd normally be interested in, Brother Cortex. I know you and I talk a lot more about video games and movies and television and film. So the show I'm doing right now might not necessarily be your cup of tea, but I do know that you like to read your Warhammer books, and that counts. For anybody who wants to say, reading Warhammer 40k books doesn't count, shut up. Yes, it counts. I don't care if it's considered, IP fluff. No, it's still reading. The Doom books are atrocious. They are terrible. But you know what? They're books. So I'm just going to defend them a little bit. Just a little. But anyhow. Damn it. I will be right back. Folks, I have to hit the latrine. But I'm going to pop on a bit of music beforehand. Here we go. Music break. I'll be right back.
Loaded spring glow on my face. Typewriter ink saving my place. Stored at elation. 5 hours late. Still faster than the elevator in this estate. Red greener. Mix them in the hall. Got a skeleton key and a shotgun wall. You were almost a sandwich. Yeah, that line still hits. Voice sexy, so wooden. Even zombies don't fit. Zombies in the mosh pit. Circle up. Don't get ripped. Stand left. Headshot right. We're staying up till Spencer's sunrise. Zombies in the mosh pit. Blood on the top. Martins, if you're here, don't open that door. We kick it in and shout one more. One more. Raccoon City burning on the CRT. Fixed camera angle staring back at me. Ink ribbon low, but my health is fine. Got a pocket full of keys, can't find my spy. Nemesis yelling, storm from the balcony. Umbrella made profit off my misery. So take control's got me stuck on a stair. Even Leon's hair can't save me there. Zombies in the mosh pit. Circle up, don't get bit. Left headshot right. We're staying up till Spencer's sunrise. Zombies in the mosh pit. Blood on the Doc Martens. If you're here, don't open that door. We kick it in and shout one more. One more. First aid.
Zombies in the Mosh Pit, a ska homage to the Resident Evil series of games. More on that another time, however. So, where was I? Going through my notes here. Okay. So as I mentioned before, before checking in with Brother Cortex and then having to take care of Nature's Call, I was mentioning that their publishers themselves are now also hesitating to produce titles in the mass market format. And there's a couple of factors for that. Several of those factors include, and are not limited to, the rising cost of labor in the production of these titles, the rising cost of pulp paper. A lot of publishers, or not publishers, but the actual printers, have trade deals and supply agreements for pulp paper for the production of mass market paperbacks, as well as the other titles that they produce, whether they be in trade paperback or hardcover. And many of these deals have not been advantageous to the printers. And over the years, that has gotten more and more complicated, largely thanks to excessive regulation. And I know that I'm going to be harping on something here when I mention this, but when you regulate everything to death and back and make it nigh on impossible for small or mid-sized printers or publishing houses to operate and still maintain a profit, you're going to see them scale back in production. It's just inevitable. When you create so much red tape that a small printing house literally cannot function outside of the academic realm or for scholastic publications, you're going to see less variety because fewer operators are going to be able to get up and running. But there's also been a decline in sales, and that's inevitable. You cannot avoid that, particularly in a realm that does not value reading as an entertainment pastime as much as it used to. I'm not saying that you have to compel people to turn back to books for reading, for entertainment. But I am saying it is a shame from my perspective that we seem to have lost touch with encouraging that kind of scholarship or that kind of use of leisure time. I'm not sitting here reading right now. I'm sitting here on a live stream. So what am I doing? Not helping the matter. I do spend a great deal of time reading, though, thankfully. But anyway, there's also been shifting customer habits towards the large trade paperback. This is also not just the customers, but myself as an author. I can tell you that when I self-publish titles through Lulu, and when I am choosing to create a physical format edition of any of the books that I've produced over the last 8-9 years, I don't choose mass market size. I choose the trade paperback size for a couple of reasons. For one, the format is a lot easier to utilize as a kind of a tech-tarded person. It's a lot easier to format my files for the A5 size type. In order to do so in Office 365, it's all of 2 or 3 clicks. Whereas to do the mass market size, I would have to reformat the entirety of my manuscript, adjust the alignment on the borders manually for both sides, top and bottom, restructure the format for the entire manuscript, then go through and adjust for typesettings that are not allowed in mass market paperback. There's a lot more headache involved, and I'm not a technical editor. I am a storyteller. I do my own editing for the first couple of rounds and rewrites, and then I turn things over to somebody who I trust as the final edit. When it comes to the actual formatting, I'm not that skilled at it. So utilizing the A5 trade paperback size, which does not have nearly as many restrictions and limitations, I find to be quite efficient and helpful as somebody who's trying to self-produce without having a great deal of technical knowledge. But customer habits have also changed in that there's a tendency nowadays to prefer trade paperback or hardcover. Even I myself find myself leaning more and more towards I will grab or purchase a copy of a story that I really enjoy and I want to have a physical copy of. I will go out of my way to find it in hardcover as a physical book rather than a paperback if I have the option. There are some times where that option is available, but is a whole lot more costly. And that's actually why I grabbed this. Pull this up. This is a copy of the New Jedi Order Force Heretic subseries from the Star Wars Expanded Universe canon. This is book 1 of the Force Heretic series, Remnant, in mass market paperback. I got this along with many of my other Star Wars books as a gift from a friend at work a couple of years ago when he had to clear out his personal home library to make room for more books. But he was basically replacing a lot of the books that he had with new books and some collectibles and some trinkets and what have you. He collects a lot of glass and pewter dragons, as well as different knives and daggers and such from various Renaissance fairs that he attends with his wife over the years. So he had to clear his shelves. And he was like, "Hey, Josh, you're a bookish guy. Do you want these?" I said, "Well, okay, yeah, I can come over after work sometime. How much do you want for them?" He's like, "I just need them out of the house. You can come, just pick them up. Just get them out of my hair." 14 Cub grocery bags later, and I have about 75% of my collection at home here was from that. The other quarter just being stuff I've picked up and purchased over the years and grabbed from those little free library things, cabinets that you can find in various places. I love those little things. They're really neat. I've thought about maybe trying to look up some DIY videos to build my own free little library cabinet, because there's some spots around town here that I think could really benefit from that. Anyway, that's all beside the point. Sorry, tangent. But I have this book, and like I said, my buddy Jason at work, he gave it to me free of charge. It was originally, when it was originally sold, for $7. Not bad. I've been to Half Price Books, and I've been to Barnes and Noble up the road from me. And in neither location can I find this book or many of the other Star Wars books. Can't find them. Not in mass market paperback. Sometimes you can find them in hardcover. The hardcovers, however, retail for between $20 to $25. I try to be a cheapskate in every way that I can be when it's something that's non-essential. I love having my books, don't get me wrong, and I do find literary capacity to be an essential skill. But the actual purchase of the books so that I can own them is not an essential thing. My mortgage, my utilities, and food, those are essentials for everybody in this house. Okay? All 6 of us have to eat, have to have a roof over our heads, have to have electricity, have to have gas, have to have water, have to have working plumbing. Okay? These are essentials. My entertainment options are not essentials. They are not absolutely necessary to day-to-day function. So when I partake of what little bit of expendable resources I personally have access to in order to purchase entertainment, I tend to favor books. I'm a bookish person, but I don't want to break the bank indulging in my particular pastime. So if I am on a strict budget and I have to choose between a paperback or a hardcover, I'm going to try to find it in paperback because it's the more affordable option. Not only is it more affordable, but once upon a time, the odds of finding something in paperback were far greater than finding it in hardcover at your common bookstore like Barnes and Noble or Half Price Books, because it was what was affordable to the seller through the distributor. When you remove the availability of the format from the seller, from the retailer, they're going to be forced to carry more hardcover or trade paperback, which are more costly. That's going to have a downstream consequence. It's going to have a knock-on effect. Don't need that. Okay, sorry. Updates. But that's one of the various knock-on effects, which is less affordability. Even ebooks outside of select indie or small house publishing presses are constantly on the rise in costs. In digital spaces, authors like Janine Dudzinski and L.R.W. Lee and a few others have said that ebook sellers and distributors have been, and I've seen this myself as someone in the space, as a storyteller, as an author, who has had to deal with third-party distributors. They are demanding greater and greater percentages on each title sold. And many of them are pressuring authors to seek higher prices for their works as a result. This allows those ebook sellers and retailers and distributors to increase or maintain their own bottom line while simultaneously foisting blame for the rising prices onto the indie authors in question. You'll see someone like Terry M. West or Arwen Phoenix, great storytellers, but they have been griped at and growled at by their fans and readers the last few years because the sale price on their titles has increased even in the ebook version, the digital version. And people have asked them, why are you upping the prices? Why suddenly this rise? Well, because the distributors, the websites that are carrying their titles for sale, are demanding a greater percentage of the gross on that sale of that title. In order to maintain their own capacity to profit, these authors are having to say, look, I got to up the price or I'm not even going to break even on the work that I put into producing this story, this novel or short story or collection or whatever it is. They are seeing their own royalties decrease because the distributors and sellers are upping the percentage that they take. Unfortunately, many of these distributors have it written into their contracts with these authors, hey, yes, we'll carry your title, but the sale price is subject to change based on the percentages that we require. So we can keep the price where it's at, but we're going to take a higher percentage to maintain our bottom line. Again, this is business. It is a business. And I am more than sympathetic to the ideal that in order to maintain the server space, in order to maintain room for that title to be carried on their website, they need to see some kind of benefit to carrying that title. That is, however, going to inevitably, invariably, cause the author to say, okay, I'm going to have to jump the price on this book up, even if it's an ebook, in order to maintain the royalty profitability on my end. It's unfortunate, but I'm not going to blame the author for that in every case. Sometimes I will, just because you can kind of tell they're being greedy. Anywho, the problem with drinking as much coffee and energy drinks as I indulge in is that I end up having to use the bathroom more frequently than some folks, like normal people. So I got to use the bathroom again. I'll be right back. Gonna put on some music again. Yeah, we'll put this one on. Back in a moment.
On your bedroom wall, every color, every slogan, every cause, every call. You march every weekend, phone held high like a torch. But the flag on your doorstep got rolled up on the porch. Whose flag are you waving when you touch the ground you're standing on? You talk like you hate this place, but you're shouting cause they hung on. Whose flag are you waving while you spit on the ones you played? You're using every right they want just to drag the house they're buried in. This land is broken from a campus green and safe. Got a sign about resistance, but you'll never read the graves. You scream our power to the people from a mic that you were handed by the names on rusted crosses in our fields you never visited. Whose flag are you waving when you curse the ground you're standing on? You talk like you hate this place, but you're shouting cause they hung on. Whose flag are you waving? Please be on the words you played.
Okay. So Whose Flag Are You Waving by Pack of Punks, which is a fictional band that first appeared in the novel American Minotaur, written by yours truly. The entire novel is available as a audiobook series right here on the YouTube and Rumble channel. It's also available in chapter by chapter format on both my X account, which is at Joshua Truergy. It's also available on my Substack in chapter by chapter format, which, boop, right there. Okay. Ta-da. Anyhow, I keep getting distracted and going on tangents. But another factor in why this is happening is that mid-sized publishers are taking fewer risks on new or non-standard storytellers for fear of them not being profitable enough. Niche and specialist publishers, many of whom enforce explicitly prejudicial submission guidelines, have been emboldened to increase prices on their titles as fewer books hit the market. There is this common misconception that every year millions and millions and billions of new books and new titles are put out onto the market. And this is not a misconception in the reality of, yes, there are so many titles glutting the market, because there are. The misconception is that they're all going to be come out and available in every format that there is. That's simply not true. Many of the niche publishers these days have turned to electronic only, digital only, in terms of format. And I find this unwise. So many books that come out in a digital only format, they can be completely wiped from existence if you violate terms of service. If we were to take a look at the situation with Orson Scott Card, the famous author of the Ender's Game novel and its follow-on series of books, he was asked to work with DC Comics to write a story arc for Superman. And he initially was more than game to work on a Superman series, until the folks at DC caught wind of some of his social media posts and some of his letters to friends and colleagues, wherein he espoused very hardline, or what they considered hardline, Judeo-Christian identity and thought. His worldview is largely formulated along a Christian ethics perspective. And he made some comments about what he would do if he had control of the character of Superman. And DC Comics said, hey, are you going to end up dropping things into Superman's dialogue or his actions that will hint at this perspective or worldview? And to his credit, Orson Scott Card said, yes, absolutely, I will. Because that is how I believe the character should present themselves as, because this is how he was presented in the original comics. Truth, justice, and the American way. That was a tagline for the character of Superman in the original run of Detective Comics. And they turned around and said, okay, thank you for being honest. We're not going to work with you. He lost an opportunity by standing by his principles. In the digital format, if Orson Scott Card, when first working with, I think it was Baen Publishing, or may have been Del Rey Publishing, if his Ender's Game had been produced in only digital format, obviously he didn't have it back at the time, but if it were, some of his subtle intimations and more quiet inclinations towards a Christian worldview that you can find in some of his works, if you are analyzing it with a careful eye towards such hinting, such implication, rather than clarification. If they had seen that and it was digital only, they could have done what has happened to a lot of authors in the current environment, which is stealth editing. wherein they get the ink dried on the publishing contract, and then in the editing bay or in the editing process, they would say, okay, your editor will have final say on what exactly goes to print and then goes to market. Most publishing contracts have a framework wherein the author has final say on what goes to print. They'll work with an editor. The editor will suggest adjustments, changes, and alterations. The author or storyteller will approve or argue and debate those changes and suggestions with their editor. If they are effective and meaningful edits, most wise authors will say, okay, you know what, fair point, let's go ahead and make that change. An editor's job is to hold the storyteller's feet to the fire and to say to them, no, this is not good. Here's what would make it better. That's an editor's raison d'etre, and why the greatest editors out there will absolutely hold your feet to the fire. They're great. When they do that to help you as a storyteller sharpen the tool of narrative that you are putting out there in the world, they are fantastic. And you want somebody who's going to butt heads with you, someone who's going to say, I like this, but here's what would be better. The editor did not create the story, but they can absolutely help you make it the best version of your story. And it would be unwise to ignore them outright. Now, to be fair, not every editor has the best ideas. They don't always have the story or the storyteller's best interests at heart, especially in-house editors who work specifically on salary for the publishing company. It's one of the few areas where a mercenary editor, a freelancer, they don't give a damn. They're just out for a paycheck. They're looking for their money. They don't care about you or your story. They care about making it marketable. But they also don't care in a good way, in that if you have a definitive point you want to get across as the storyteller, a mercenary editor will say, okay, boss, you're the client, you're the boss. You don't have to take my suggestion. This is just what I'm thinking you should do. And if you, as the author, choose not to listen to them, they can wipe their hands and say, hey, I offered a suggestion. He or she didn't take it. You can't blame me. Final say is with the author. What's become much more prevalent over the last decade is that mid and large-sized publishing houses, in their publication contract for purchase from either a literary agent or directly from the author, they will have a caveat in the publishing contract that states that the editor has final say, not the author. I don't care for this. I don't like this at all. It robs the storyteller of authority and agency in their own work. I'm not a fan. And if the author decides, I don't want to give you final say as the editor, they can say okay and just terminate the offer of publication right then and there. That's become more and more common amongst mid-sized and larger publishing houses. The folks at the editing department, the folks in PR, the folks in marketing end up with more and more and more power over final say of what the story is when it hits market. The author themselves are getting less money, less say, and less authority over their own work. This is why so many of them are leaning into independent self-production. It's because they can't necessarily trust what the editors are going to end up demanding of them. Now, how does this all dovetail into the fading or disappearance of the mass market paperback? The mass market paperback is a format of production that primarily has been in the hands of mid and large size publishing houses. Your small-time, independent, or tiny publishing houses are relying on digital ebooks and trade paperback for the vast majority of their works, of their production, which is causing more and more this format to fade and disappear. Admittedly, a lot of authors are disappointed by this development, myself included, but we're not really shocked. The mass market paperback has been in a long and steady decline since about 2005. How bad is it exactly? In 2024 and 2025, according to Nielsen Bookscan, the format only accounted for 3% of all primary market sales. That's pretty low. However, the secondary market is still overflowing with the beauty of these books. In outlets like Books A Million, Half Price Books, Goodwill, Savers, Unique, one can find plenty of mass market titles to cherish. Those little free libraries I mentioned earlier, they're a treasure trove. Those boxes that pop up all over the place, especially here in the suburbs. They are full of donated books from locals to exchange. There's always mass market paperbacks in those little boxes, and I love that they are a primary format to find there. I've grabbed a few of my own collection from those free little library locations, and I've ditched a few that I started reading and was not impressed by exchanging those and putting them into the little free libraries. When I come across a book that I don't want to keep a hold of because I'm not attached to it, it didn't particularly resonate with me, I will donate it to the little free library boxes. I would recommend that if you have one of those little boxes near your home, you consider doing the same. If you've got a book that you're not extremely attached to and you want to get it out of your house or your apartment or wherever you're living, just to free up some space, look for a little free library. You can Google it, little free library near me. There's maps all over the place that you can find to get pinpointed where the nearest one is to your home, and fill those things up with any of the paperbacks or hardcovers or trade any book that you are not attached to. Don't throw it out. Don't put it in the bin. Don't burn it. Put it into one of those little free libraries because they can always use more material. And you might find something in that little free library to replace it with, something that's a little bit more up your alley. I'm just recommending that you look for your options. So, anyhow, that's just about going to wrap it for me for this one for today. Currently working my way through Alan Dean Foster's Cyber Way. I've only taken a handful of notes, but it's been intriguing reading. I'm only 40 pages into it. Because I've only had like 10 minutes here and there the last couple of days to start reading in on it. Quite interesting to me, some of the concepts that older sci-fi writers and storytellers found their way into seeing coming down the pike in the future. This book was published, the copyright on it is 1990, but he's got the concept of smartphones in here. He calls them spinners, and it's like a little PDA, like a little black brick device in the detective's pocket that he connects with a cable into a phone line in the house of a crime scene in order to access the police database. And he makes a note in there about if you're getting bored at the police station while you're hooked into the network and while information is loading, you can use a program on the spinner device to go check ESPN. He actually names ESPN in there as another database to go hop onto to watch sports. It's like, wait a minute, that's just going on your phone. That's these days. This was in 1990 that he wrote this. The concept was there in his head already, to connecting a small pocket-sized device to the internet for watching video and checking databases. Sci-fi storytellers are some of the greatest prophets or visionaries that we have ever come across. We should not dismiss them out of hand as kooks and weirdos and wackaloons. We get some of our best ideas from them. They are the dreamers of the world. They think up these things and say, I wonder if we could. And then later on we do. But we never really go back to look at, well, what did it look like once upon a time? It's part of why I love going back to old sci-fi these days. To just kind of check in with, did we think of that before? Am I on the right track? Or am I completely out of my mind and seeing things that aren't really there? I don't know. Anyhow, that's going to do it for me, folks. There's so many other things I would love to comment on that are outside of my wheelhouse, that are beyond my normal bailiwick. It's not what people come to me for. Not that many people come to me for anything, really, especially not online. I'm just a bookish guy. But I do have thoughts on and perspectives on other things going on in the world around me, particularly when you consider I live in Minnesota. I live a 10-minute drive south of the Twin Cities. And there has been a lot going on in recent weeks in my neck of the woods. Things that I have a perspective on, but not being someone deeply involved in such events, it's not what I am necessarily comfortable exploring or talking about broadly, publicly, because it's not what I'm known for. And I would rather avoid that conversation for now, particularly when doing so would not be helpful. I won't say beneficial, because if I wanted to be a complete maximum grifter, I would just come on here and say, hey, I live in the area where all of these things are popping off and happening. Let me give you my 2 cents. That's not going to be actually valuable to you. It's not going to be valuable to anybody, really. Because I am only, I'd say, 3/4 of the way read in, and it's not my area of expertise. I believe the term is speaking out of school. These books, this is where I have my area of understanding and expertise and passion. So that's what I'm going to choose to continue to focus on. If I make socio-political or geopolitical statements or observations, particularly in terms of the culture wars, I'm going to couch it in books. It's why every now and again I do get on here and grumble about socio-political things or things in the culture war area as pertains to books and comics and television and film, because that's the area where I have the deepest investment and understanding. I will talk about things that affect my kids because I'm a dad first. And how these things influence my children in their day-to-day lives is something I immediately have contact with. So I will make those comments there occasionally. But it's not what I'm ever going to focus or specialize in. And I would thank you for your patience and understanding in that regard. Because that's not why anybody comes and watches or listens to what I have to say on these things. I'm not an expert in those areas. But I am very much invested in my family, what impacts my kids, what impacts my wife and I, and what impacts everybody in terms of books. That's going to be all for me, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. I ask that you take care of yourselves, and as always, keep reading.